If you're 50, if you're 20, no matter how you are, all those experiences you went through, both good and bad, no matter what they are, your experiences and your age, your past is your platform.
Welcome to Superpower with Kristine Milkovich, the podcast where we help you unleash your inner hero. Whether you're a change maker, a trailblazer, or just looking to level up, this is the space to uncover your unique superpower and transform it into unstoppable momentum. Join me as we dive deep with inspiring guests, sharing their game-changing insights, empowering us all to be the hero of our own stories. Get ready to embrace your deepest purpose, own your power, and change the world one bold move at a time. Get ready, buckle up. You are going to be so inspired. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. We have an incredible minister, pastor, Fortune 500 company, GE executive, father, husband, brother, so many incredible superpowers and hats that this gentleman wears. We cover some life experience, some career and work experience, the passion and how do you find it in life and harness it, the strategies for getting through the tough times, and make travel a priority. Enjoy this episode. Hello, and welcome back to the next episode of Superpower. This is such a treat. You guys are going to absolutely love this episode. We have a very, very special man in the house at the Superpower studio, and we're going to just actually jump in because an illustrious career, worn a lot of hats, so much inspiration. It's going to fill up this 45, 50 minutes and then some. So let's just get to it and welcome Charles to Superpower.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Kristine, and I'm so happy to talk with you and, share whatever we can, our lives back and forth, and however the world can receive this and absorb this and make it a better place. That's what we're all about.
Well, just as I suspected, you are always full of readiness, willingness, energy, and just some great life lessons. So again, I do lead every episode, Charles. I know you've heard a few, and one with your beautiful, amazing daughter, but I know you could be doing lots of different things right now with lots of options. So thank you so much sincerely
Oh,
for
my goodness.
giving up this next hour and helping us all continue to unravel our heroism and our superpower. So
Mm,
thank you, Charles.
thank you.
So let's just get right to it. Couple cool things as I was preparing to sit down and talk to you and knowing, and for our guests, they wouldn't know this, we'll get into it a little bit, but our historical friendship and family connection and familial
Hmm.
background. Notably, you introduced my wife and I to our guests at our wedding. I mean, you have imprinted and implanted so many wonderful gifts to our life. That is certainly just one. But for folks listening that have never met Charles McKinney, tell us just a little bit out of the gate where you reside, where you're from. Are you sitting right now in Seattle or are you in another state? Just give us a little bit of high level background, Charles, about, where you hail from and what you're doing right now. And then I'll kind of lead some questions into your career and all of the amazing community work that you provide. But where do you live? Where do you and your wife live?
Well, we live in North Carolina. We live in Jacksonville, North Carolina, which is right on the coast, 50 miles north of Wilmington, 50 miles south of the Outer Banks, in a beautiful community. We live in Jacksonville. It's where the Camp Lejeune Marine Corps base is stationed.
Okay.
And it's the largest amphibious base in the world. And we have a lot of young people as a result of that and young families. So we're older people in a very young community, which keeps us very young. And so, anyway, we're from Jacksonville, and our culture, revolves around Marine Corps and beach life, and so that's what we do.
Wow. Okay. So really
Mhm.
kind of as far as the US, one of the epicenters that folks either come for careers or family planning or vacationing. Because here's the thing, I'm going to raise my hand. I've never been, and it's terrible, particularly how long I've known you and your family. But I've seen the photos through your daughter's eyes and your grandchildren's eyes. And my
Mhm.
wife has visited before, as you know, to your family. place, and it's definitely on my bucket list to just get out there to see
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
I think anybody listening to this show, you'd have to be living under a rock to just not hear, even in travel journals and on Alaska flights, just the pristine beauty and nature of the area that you live in. Now, did you originally hail from there? Is that like deep roots family for you? Tell us a little bit about that, Charles.
Yeah, pretty much. I was born in Greenville, South Carolina, which is right across the border, so to speak. We were at one time one state before they broke us
Oh,
into two.
okay.
Yeah, that's a
Interesting.
little unknown fact. North Carolina and South Carolina was actually one state, and they broke to two. But anyway, I was born in Greenville and went to Memphis, Tennessee for 1 year, and then came to Jacksonville when I was 14 and a half. So I've been in Jacksonville my whole life, you might
Okay.
as well say.
Yeah.
Went to high school there, met my wife there, who was born and raised there, and we married and raised our family there, and yeah, been there ever since. That's where
You're claiming
that's
it.
yeah,
It is
yeah,
home. Well,
yeah.
I'm going to stop being foolish and one of these months and years take up the wonderful invitations that your family has always
Hmm.
extended our way. We are definitely
Hmm.
overdue.
Hmm.
So, that being said, Charles, going back to the fact that you brought your and you're going to tell me if you prefer pastor or minister. Which one do
Hmm.
you prefer as far as a title or a
A
salutation?
pastor,
Pastor,
pastor.
okay.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
you you know, I know you in lots
Hmm.
of capacities, but I know you as Brother Charles. That's
Right,
literally
right,
how I met you. You told me to
right.
feel comfortable calling you that.
Absolutely.
Getting back to you sort of blessing and ushering my wife and I at our wedding. There's just so many hats that I know you wearing
Hmm.
in the 12 years I've been blessed to be in your life and a part of your family and your community. So let's kind of go back a minute. Let's go there. Did your calling and your connection to the ministry and to being a coach and a guide and a spiritual advisor in your community to so many, did that come from a young age, Charles? And were you influenced by that, or was that more of a nurture nature thing? Like, tell us a little bit about how you've really grown that part of your own life and spirituality. I'd love to hear that backstory.
Oh yeah, and I love to talk about this. I especially like to talk about it in a community like this, and I hope thousands of people will watch this. Because it's nature and nurture, and it starts with nature. I was born this way.
Mm,
I was born loving people, wanting to help people. I was just born that
mm,
way. I was born to be able to work in a crowd and get things done and not, fight and this kind of thing. So it was nature, and was lucky enough in divine appointment is enough to get jobs that allowed me to nurture that.
mm.
And even where I was a little on the shy end of the stick, I had was thrust into positions that they say leadership comes with a microphone. That's one, and if you're going to be a leader, you have to be, comfortable with a microphone. And so I learned to, come out of that a little bit. I always was in the background and never actually wanting to step up and take the microphone,
Okay.
but I had other people around me
Yeah.
that saw light in me and encouraged me, and some actually pushed me into doing the things that I've done, and it catapulted me into a lifelong career and a more deeper dive into speaking and public engagements and weddings and funerals and hospital chaplains and stuff all that stuff that I do. But yeah, but I would say to people, it's nature first.
Mm.
Everybody's born with a passion gene in them, and they have got to unlock it, unleash it, and there's tools to do that with. Maybe we'll get into it on this program, but that's the thing.
Separate from this podcast, you are hired, hired, hired. You just used like 6 of the Superpower podcast marketing terms: unleash,
Uh,
reveal, find,
uh-huh.
uncover. This is just, you can't make this stuff up. That's why I always say, I'm just here talking to really amazing, cool people. No pressure. Like, this is just a blast. Let's go a little deeper on that. So, really, what you're sharing with all of us through your own lens and your own discovery is that maybe in the beginning, and it could be at 20 or 60, right? Beginnings start, if we're also fortunate, hopefully we're beginning new beginnings all the time. We're going to get to that as a boomer. And you know, my age in the company, I think I'm a little north of your daughter and your other children, but nonetheless, I'm considered a Gen X, if you want to really put my 54-year-old self on a map. And I think you mentioned some things that are so important, and we cannot get your leadership and your coaching enough in this world,
Mm.
is that somebody else or a group, you can go there, or you can just blanket say, you know, a group, saw some particle, some spark, something in Charles that maybe at that moment he didn't yet fully see or fully believe. Go a little deeper on that, because I have to suspect in your tenured career, you've been that person to so many people where you've helped them sort of unpack that. But talk to us a little bit more about what that means in your life, Charles.
Well, I'll start back and I'll try to touch all, well, at least on two of my
Yeah.
professional careers. The first is working at General Electric in nuclear fuel. I worked there for 36 years. And people saw things in me there and my people skills.
Mm.
And they immediately kept pulling me into HR, human resources, and things like that to work with people. Again, I was a little shy of the mic. And so there are opportunities I missed, but I always say that it's not that I missed them. It just was God's divine appointment, that I'd be here a while or move to here or stay where I'm at. But anyway, yeah, people just invited me into different arenas where, I could use the human skills that I had. And so I just embraced that. And then when I became a pastor, a couple of the deacons in the church that I was in approached me and said, "We need to license you to preach."
Mm.
And I said, "No, no, I'm not going to do that." I said, "If God wants me to preach, He'll make it happen." You know how we do that. Sometimes we'll say, a lot of people out there listening to this podcast are sitting around saying, "If that's going to be, it will be." Well, let me tell you, sometimes you need pushing. You need to
That
be
is
pushed.
such a good point.
Yeah.
You said something that I talked to my mom a lot about. Regardless of your faith and what that is to your higher self, I'm just going to repeat it because it's so important. I need to hear it every day. Sometimes you still have to have that internal compass to either push. Some might call it be assertive. Some might call
Mm,
it be aggressive. Some might call it,
mm.
allow it to happen. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Keep your flow, but
No,
that is an important point because it's part of the package, right? It is part of the whole thing.
well, it's part of the package, and it's part of the divine flow, because other people have divine flow running through them, and they are seeing your gift. And the most important, your confirmation comes from those around you. They look at you and say, "Kristine, you're so good at this. You're so good at this," or "Why are you not doing this?" Or you could really excel at this. And we have to listen to those voices.
Mm.
We really have to. And even though in that particular moment I was uncomfortable with that, this gentleman named John, he said, "We're going to license you to preach." And so I said, "Okay." So anyway, he licensed me. The church licensed me and got behind me and helped me hone my skills a little bit. And in 3 years, I was pastoring a church. And so,
It's 0 to 100.
yeah. Yeah. And it's just incredible. You really need the people around you. And say myself, I need to do that as well. I need to speak into your life. You need to speak into mine.
Mm.
When we see a person who has something extraordinary, we have to help them break out of that. Everybody does not have that, "Oh, I'm going to set the world on fire"
Mm.
attitude.
Mm.
So we have to help them. And
Mm.
so, man, if you've got friends, be in a group. You need good friends. You need friends that's going to support you
Yeah.
and also bring you down when you're out of
Oh,
your
yeah.
lane. And so you need all of that. So
Yeah.
yeah, and
You
so
need the grounding and the stabilizing and sometimes the
mhm,
reality checks, or when you're healing the
mhm,
wounds, right? When you're healing
mhm,
the falls, the screw ups, the mess ups, I call them all kinds of things and they happen often.
mhm,
It is really about that, for lack of a better term, that village, right? That support system around you to help
absolutely,
you crawl out of
absolutely,
that at times. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it really is.
Oh, wow. I am just the energy and your passion for what you do. It just flows in every word that you say, and I've always felt that way about you, Charles. So,
Mm. Well, thank
kind
you.
of going along those lines,
Mhm.
I ask this question often because I think in contemporary times, regardless of your age, what you do, where you live, in some way, because of the digital age and the speed of our age and the expectation in some ways, even if we put it on ourselves, of sort of production and workflow and getting it done and, all these 2025 things that we're managing right now. When you parlayed your, I tend to call it community service, give back service, you may be referring it to as your ministry, your work at your place of worship. But when that became such a big piece of the pie for Charles, how did you manage or kind of flow then with your corporate career and coming home being dad and coming home being husband? And I know there's no pretty canned answer. That's just called doing what you love, or at least that's my version. But tell me a little bit about maybe some objection handling, or was it ever tough kind of wearing multiple hats and sort of honoring all of this bits and parts of you that really, like you said, you were born this way. Like there was no holding it
Mm-hmm.
back. Charles was going to find it and go
Mm-hmm.
because that's who Charles is. But maybe
Mm-hmm.
talk a little bit about how that maybe looked throughout the years. You've got to have some
Mm.
stories around that for sure.
Oh man, do I have
You're
stories?
like, that's a whole nother podcast, Milkovich,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
give us
Well,
some
yeah,
sound bites.
yeah. Well, let me just say first of all to you and everyone out there: be kind to yourself. Man, don't be so tough on yourself. Man, work-life balance. There's a million
It's a
books
bunch of
written on
crap.
it. Yeah,
The
yeah,
term
and
itself, sorry, I cuss on
yeah.
this show, Charles.
No, no,
I'll
that's
try to
fine.
keep
Hey,
it in rank. It's
I
a
cuss
bunch of
when the deacon
crap.
cries. But anyway, yeah, I mean, you're going to be out of. It's like look at it like a balloon. You push it on one side and it pushes out on the other, but it's always moving. It's never ending. However, you can be more mindful of it. In my early work at GE, I went up to work out. I'd work 12 hours a day. I'd work through New Year's Eve up till midnight to get things done for the previous year. And yeah, my family actually did. I think they suffered from me being gone. And so we do that today. We always do that. We're going, 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 and our family does suffer from that. It evolves. As I got older, I got in ministry, and believe it or not, ministry took me away from my family more than GE did,
Mm,
because my emotion and my passion for people hurting or people with problems, I would spend it on them and not so much at home.
got you.
And so
Yeah.
and so that evolved too, because it came to an awakening in me that your first ministry is in your house.
Mm,
People say, let's go on a mission field here, there, and the other, but you have to walk through your own home, through
mhm.
the kitchen, through the dining room, through the bedroom before you get to the street. So always
Yes.
remember that the best of you belongs in ministry to your home,
Mm,
and not give the best to
to
everyone
everybody
else,
else.
and be neglectful. But it is a struggle. It is a balance. And now I'm just getting to the point where I look back like everyone on this podcast is going to look back and say, I regret this. I regret this. We were learning. It's evolving. And just, once you learn it, just try to impart it to the next generation who, you know what, are not going to listen.
Exactly. Just like when my mama tells me stuff at this age, I'm like, "No, no, no."
Yeah.
I
So,
don't like
yeah.
that, Nancy.
So, yeah, it just evolves. Work life balance evolves, but the sooner you find out how important it is,
Yeah,
and maybe even the sooner you are able to communicate it
yeah.
to maybe your partner, your spouse, or your children. I mean, I've sat my kids down when they were like 18 and 20 years old, and told them, I said, I wasn't around, but I was raising you, trying to do the best I
Mm,
could. If I need to ask forgiveness for whatever, missing a ball game or this, that. But I
mhm,
just explained to them so they
mhm,
would know that life
mhm.
is tough, and
Yeah.
sometimes you make decisions that are not good for the family, but hey, we're all a work in progress. So just like I asked but I wanted them to know.
Yeah, yeah,
I was trying to say, look, this
yeah.
may happen to you too,
That's right.
but I just want you to know that this is part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
You're gonna miss some stuff.
Well, I think even the evolution of adult children coming to their parents, my mother, whom I know you have met, Nancy, over the years,
Yes.
we share this story just the other day, it comes up often, where the first time I took her to lunch and I said, no, 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 I got the bill. I'm a working girl. I can do this. And then, and I'm just going to say it like it is. The first time when I was young, getting my own apartment, and I realized how wickedly expensive feminine products are, and toilet paper and floss. I mean, like all the
Yeah.
things, not just the cool,
Yeah.
glamorous things, like the things that you have to have. So
Right.
I think that that's a beautiful testament that for our parents, if we're also fortunate on both sides, we come around and go, oh, they're human. Oh,
Uh-huh.
oh, they're
Yeah.
male, female, they, them, whoever they are just made of flesh and
Hmm.
bones. They're walking around with these meat bags like everybody else. And as much as we have expectation, and there's certain things that feel really good and feel required when you are a child and a parent. But, at the end of the day, if we're also lucky, we eventually, right, Charles, we sort of have that collision of like, oh, you're just one of
Hmm.
me. You're just trying to figure it
Hmm.
out, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so kind of knowing that you had this life of, career, working man, GE, Fortune 500. I mean, this is like no small company. When did you know it was time? And I don't know if the answer is just fiscally or there was some sort of emotional or spiritual forks in the road when you sort of officially retired. Because we know today with folks, many living longer just generationally, baby boomers, largest population right now in the country. And I'll outframe this for 1 second because I know you just went there, and I always have to plug my communities or I should not have a podcast. The Center for Active Living is a standout premier 53-year-old organization in West Seattle here in the Western Washington region in the Junction. And they provide services to all kind of folks. But where this is tying into this story is forever their name was the Senior Center. Their
Hmm.
name, we went through, I have the great honor of chairing as the VP of the board currently. And we went through a huge marketing name change. Charles, you heard a little bit about this when you toured the facility this week. But we did a poll, and across the country, literally like 95% of senior centers, guess what they're doing? They're dropping the word senior. This is
Hmm.
not just the Center for Active Living. I mean, we did a massive analysis before taking the time and money and energy to create a completely different brand, logo, colors, all of it. I mean, we hired a marketing firm. So I'm giving a backstory on that for the listeners, because what comes up for you when you hear that at your healthful age, active age, passionate age, vibrant age, all the things you do? What does that mean to you? Why do you think so many people that are 85 and going to the Center for Active Living to do A, B, and C are like, I don't really connect with the word senior right now. I'm not really feeling it. Talk to me about that, Charles. What does that look like for you?
Well, what it is, I mean, I'm very familiar with this. I've been on the Baptist Aging Ministry for North Carolina for probably 15 years, and I've worked with different agencies on aging. And what it is, let me just give you a cool illustration that
Love it.
really puts it in context. And that is this: you were in middle school, and there's high schoolers. And if you go to a church, they have youth programs, and they have middle schoolers and high schoolers. And over the say 500 years since they've had youth programs, they've tried to put the middle schoolers and high schoolers together. It's never worked. It's like oil and vinegar. It won't work. They found out they're just two different generations. There's middle school, and high schoolers don't want to be with middle schoolers, and middle schoolers do not want to be with high schoolers.
Interesting.
Well, I was tasked with a job to make these two communities work. And I immediately went in and I said, and I told the whole board, I told all the people that were involved, I said, what you're trying to do is not going to work.
Like, they
It's
do not
not
want to do
going to
this.
work. It won't work. I said, the builder generation, which is the generation ahead of us, they were born after or before 1946. 46 to 64 is the boomers. The guys before us are builders.
Okay.
Wonderful people, but they do things different. They do things different. They think differently. Everything is in place. Everything is this way. And the Bloomer generation, we were all over the place. You think about it. We were the 70s generation. We didn't even have a birth control pill until our generation. We brought
Exactly.
in the birth control
Yeah.
pill. We brought in drugs. We brought in marijuana. We brought in the music. We brought in
You brought in Gloria
the
Steinem. You brought in all kinds of cool stuff.
the flower children, the Woodstock. I mean, we brought in all this crazy stuff, and that's who we were. We don't fit with this really organized
Right.
older group.
Yeah, I got you.
And not only did we not fit with them, we didn't want to be a part of them,
Right.
and didn't want to be associated with them.
That's right.
So I, in my getting back to my panel I was on, I told the folks, and I said, you can try this craziness all you want. It's not going to work. If you want people to darken the door of a senior center, you better change the name and change what you're serving in there.
Interesting.
Because it's not going to happen.
So spot on in the Carolinas and in your sphere, right? I mean, this is the same.
Same thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
we've renamed everything.
So that being said, because again, I know, and I'm so delighted that you came down to West Seattle and took a tour and had lunch and really saw this wonderful organization that is very near and dear to me and my time and my resources. But we have had double-digit growth. We have had just as many people in your age group as in mine coming in and going to jazz night, going to rainbow bingo, having their business luncheons there. So are you also seeing that really impacting kind of culturally and from a vibrancy standpoint? Are you seeing some, elevated change or interest, or maybe just even a refresh energy? I mean, what has that been like for you at your center or your communities?
Yeah, it's the same way. It's the same way. We changing the names of some of them, and like I said, we live in the youngest city in America.
Okay, interesting. I did not know that.
Jacksonville's the youngest city in America, and it may have been beat out by somebody else by now, but we were that way for the last 10 years or so, and if not, maybe the top 3 youngest ages in America. So,
wow.
I mean, the leadership came in, the city came in, and of course ours is covered by county commissioners and city funds, most of our centers. And of course, there's also people give to it, and there's organizations, just like the West Seattle Center. And but they actually set up a lot of programs in there for young moms, because we got baby carriages everywhere. We got this young generation. And so our community center now, they call it the Commons.
Oh, I love that.
They call it
it's
the
very
Commons.
Neutral and inclusive.
And one of the things that was ironic is pickleball.
Oh,
they played pickleball.
So
well,
popular.
when pickleball first came, when it first came in, when you mentioned pickleball, it's a senior sport. It's a boomer sport. You know what I mean? It's not for young kids.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Now boomers can't get on the court because all the young people are on the court. But that helps,
Yeah.
And again, we coexist. We're not trying to make us,
right,
intergenerational. We coexist. It's
Yeah.
the same with the builders, the boomers. We will have our interactions,
Sure.
but they can't be forced. They just
Yeah.
can't be forced.
Yeah.
There's tools to do that. I always say, like, when we want to embrace the younger people, and I would say this, and I want to do this actually, so maybe something you pull together with your venue, but there was a big church in this town, a mega church, and they, in their mega church, they had a young group called the Young Professionals. And they met like Mondays at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock and prayed and maybe discussed things, but they were a group of people. Well, they didn't necessarily and wouldn't necessarily interact with older people. But what they did is, over on Lake Washington, this guy owned like 16 health clubs in California, and here he had this beautiful place. He had cars in the driveway. I couldn't even pronounce the names of them. And he invited like 135 young people to come to that event. And he had all the older people there who had worked for Bill Gates and different people in the city, and they were there to mentor these young people. But here was the caveat. Here was the thing that this wasn't going to happen automatically.
Right.
So they did this venue, and every one of those corporate executives was going to meet with one of those people for an hour a month to mentor them for 1 year, free of charge.
Wow.
And so they told them, after the ladies spoke, the men spoke, the different people spoke, They said, now, if any one of these, like if you're in aerospace or you're in executive secretary, whoever your career looks like you would like to be mentored by, you get in this line, give them your information and do that.
So
So I'm
smart.
just saying,
What a
I'm just,
great event. I'm 100% stealing that and
please,
doing it.
it needs to happen,
Yeah.
because so many young people, even people like yourself, if you're in your 50s, man, in your early 50s it's one of those times where you're getting ready for your next step. You don't know what it is, but you can feel it.
You strike up a really great point, is that, again, if we are so blessed with health and wellness, because that's not assumed at any age, but as we continue to if we are being gifted with that opportunity, that each decade of a person's life, there are these sort of like archetypal sort of crossroads, turns that seem, even though we all have our own journey and our own story and our own background and our own struggles, there does seem to be these like trigger points, like you just said, like, oh, early 50s, something's coming, whether you like it or not, Milkovich. I think that that's just a wonderful, exciting thing about life, right?
Yes.
That you can sort of see, to right now, your point, you're making
Hmm.
pivotal changes right now as we
Right.
speak, right?
I am. Yeah, I am. Yeah. Yeah. This is a different, I've worked all my life. I worked since I was 10 years old. I was a car hop when they used to have the trays they used to take
Oh,
and sit on your window.
yes.
And I would go to the car.
A&W still has those in Detroit. Sorry for the interruption.
Really? They
Yes,
do?
legit. A&W.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, but they probably only deliver it because they probably have a microphone to
Exactly.
order.
I mean, it's a modern version, but it just, that
Yeah,
took me
yeah.
back. It's so romantic to think about, the roller skater, wait staff coming to the window, right, and putting it on.
Yeah, Sonic does that back home. There's a
Okay.
restaurant chain called
Cool.
drive-in restaurant called
Okay.
Sonic. But where were we on this?
We were just talking, for me, I slightly romanticize it because my mother, Nancy, says, Kristine, you came out of the womb at 40. Like, it's
Right.
whatever. You came out of the womb wanting your own apartment, your own job, your own office,
Uh-huh.
your own checkbook. I mean, I'm like, oh Lord. But we were just kind of talking about what can,
Oh
to
yeah.
me, feel
Yeah.
very romantic and
Mhm.
exciting, that,
Right.
I think it's easy. I'll throw
Mhm.
myself under the bus. I think it's easy at times, if I'm struggling or feeling down or unclear, unsure, unconfident, like, oh, I don't have much time, and oh my gosh, it's the 50s and I better figure it all out. And,
Mhm.
I know I'm smart enough to know that's me sabotaging me, and that
Mhm.
discovery and learning and healing and moving through shame and all the things that we're armed to do, again, if we're so fortunate while
Mhm.
we're carrying these meat bags around, is that
Mhm.
that really never ends, right? I mean,
No.
you're my advisor, you're my elder, you're
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
wiser self that I am aspiring to become. And just,
Mhm.
maybe lean into that. I mean, right, we going
Mhm.
back to be easy, a little bit easier on yourself. I think you said something
Mhm.
so important, is, man, can
Mhm.
we be jerks to ourselves.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
I mean, big
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah, let me just elaborate on that just a little bit. One of the biggest things that helped me is when you start carrying your baggage forward when you're trying to make a decision. And some of these maybe things in the past that you didn't get done and you're thinking about it. I've learned this recently, so I'm able to speak to it. But your past, your experiences, both good and bad, whatever they are they're so meaningful to you. They're so precious to you, even the bad stuff.
Mm.
Because here's the quote that I gave myself, and that is, "My past, my experience is my platform."
Mm.
That's my
Can you
platform.
say that
So
one more time, because everybody needs to hear it again?
yeah. Yeah, if you're 50, if you're 20, no matter how you are, all those experiences you went through, both good and bad, no matter what they are, your experiences and your
Mm.
age, your past is your platform.
Mm.
You got
Can
through
I
it.
say amen to
Yeah.
that?
Yes,
Since
absolutely.
I'm
Let's
amongst a
double amen it.
minister,
We might
pastor.
even say we might even say a hallelujah. But
Hallelujah. I will go to
yeah,
church right now and
yeah.
say it.
When you start thinking about those things, those are not negatives. That's the platform that Kristine stands on. That's what you stand on. And here's what Rick Warren said, one of my favorite guys. He says, he said, your greatest ministry to the world will come from your greatest pain. So nobody likes pain, but for God's sake, leverage it. Think about it. Whatever you've been through, you can use that. You can be the most passionate about that in helping someone else. If someone slips and falls, you can say, man, I've done that 1,000 times, but you can help. You've experienced it. Whatever your greatest pain was, become your greatest passion. And so, I would just say, when you start feeling down, just remember that's your platform. That's your that's part of who you are, and it's part of your wealth. It's not part of your demise. It's part of your wealth.
Yes, Charles. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. One of your many superpowers is, redirecting and reframing something that I think we can all really struggle with and give it a negative tone. But to your point, it's really a deposit in the bank, right? It's the actual opposite, feeling like you're reminding us that is a superpower, and it's a deposit in the emotional bank, the experience bank, the platform bank. Love that. Thank you. So in the last 12 years, I'm not going to lie, even before I do research for my shows, we're social media friends. I follow you on Instagram and on Facebook and all the things, and get such pleasure off watching your life and your travels and the experiences that you and your wife Donna and your family, are so gracious to share. But you know what? Not everybody's built for travel. Not everybody. That's not everybody's jam. Sometimes I think it can be a cup decreaser, like it seems exhausting or too much work, or what's the big deal. But you really seem like you have had a life, and you have a current robust life of exploration, travel. You put in the show notes, you sort of deem yourself a lifelong learner. So for our audience, maybe share a little bit about why that's such a big commitment to you. Why do you make that a priority, especially at this age? Like, what's the big deal? You talk about that.
Well, for me, it's just the excitement of learning other cultures and other people. I think I would encourage anyone at whatever life stage they're in to explore travel, explore being around other people in other cultures. To me, I when I came back from my first overseas trip, I told my wife, I said, you get more education, personal education, and a world education, meaningful education to yourself for your life when you do travel than any other source. You can read a geography book, or you can read a history book or about other civilizations, but until you immerse yourself in it, you don't learn it. They say you learn by what you see, you write, and you speak, but when you immerse yourself in it, it's just so enlightening. One of the things, when I went to Italy in 1975, it was a company trip. And I was a Christian, and I was learning all about the Christian faith, and we had been taught the American side and all. And I got over there and, went into a church that was built in 900. And I said, oh my God,
Bananas.
I mean,
right.
And then I talked to a priest, and how he made his own wine and stuff, and I don't know, I just learned so many things that I only had an American view about. I mean, I thought that everybody learned from us, that all the other countries in the world were born out of us. And I'm thinking, we're not.
That nationalism is real, and more real by the minute.
And I'm thinking, my gosh, I got sick while I was over there, and the way that they treated me for my sickness was nothing like our Western medicine, nothing. And I just thought, first of all, I went over there with an American feeling like, this is not going to work. Y'all don't know how to do it. Da 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 da. And I came back with like, I've been misinformed or something. I don't know. But anyway,
thank you for your transparency, right? I mean, it's true though. And until you get out of, and I don't mean you, me, just our bubble, right? Let's call it what it is. Insert whatever that means to whoever's listening. Until you break out of that on some level, be it forced or by choice, how can you ever even start to consider seeing or
Mm-hmm.
perceiving or processing life from someone else's lens, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
no one can exactly have a lived experience of anyone else, but
No.
having empathy, compassion,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
inclusion, right? Looking from an equity lens, I think, is one of the biggest gifts we can discover
Mm-hmm.
on this earth, right? It sounds like you just have
Mm-hmm.
so much commitment to that, Charles.
Yeah, I mean, and you learn that as you go around. Like I said, you learn other people, you learn other cultures, and you
Mhm.
learn why they tick and how they tick.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it earlier. I would just encourage everyone to be a lifelong learner. I don't
Mhm.
care if you how old you are. It can happen to people in their 50s, like yourself too. I mean, I remember the 50s because in the 50s, year old range is when we had that great, for me, was when we had the great financial crisis
Mm,
of 2007.
that was fun.
And I was on a plane with a guy in a three-piece suit when you used to wear three-piece suits. And he was used to a high-level corporate job, and he had lost it.
Mm,
And he was having to learn a new way.
mm,
He had lost that job, and a lot of things came out of that 2007 crisis that speak to kind of what we're speaking about
mhm,
today. You have to be. You can't stay if you stay stuck in your 50s. You're never going to embrace the next what is
mm.
and what will be. And yeah, I think you just learn that from people and culture and keeping your eye on what's going on in the world.
Well, you bring up so many important points in general, but
Hmm.
right now, with the state of the affairs, state of the world, state of the country, and it's really regardless of whoever has voted for who and what side they're on and all the BS that's happening right now. But you bring up a really important point, I think, today, right now, while we're recording this at 9:51 a.m., that we cannot lean into enough is the scarcity mentality and the fear of someone taking what is mine, or if I share, I'm not going to have enough. And
Hmm.
you can see and feel how that makes me want to like scratch my eyeballs out, because that's how much
Hmm.
passion I feel around the that.
Hmm. Hmm.
How can we keep unpacking this, Charles? Meaning us humans, the nation, the
Hmm.
world. How do you get up every day and unpack that? Because it's a real problem right now and it's impacting
Hmm.
all of us, right? Again,
Hmm.
regardless of where we stand
Hmm.
politically. So, talk to me a little bit
Hmm.
about that scarcity fear that if I share, I'm going to be screwed. How do you manage that in your life?
Well, speaking to the world and where we are right now, and I'll agree, it's a very chaotic for sure. I've thought long and hard how to manage that, but for me, I think it's just waking up every day, and for everyone,
Mm,
in this chaotic
tough times.
climate,
Yeah.
they always tell us, who was it, Gandhi, that said, be the world you want to see, or something
Hmm.
like that.
Hmm.
And I can't do everything. Nobody can do everything, but I just do my part.
Yep.
And I want to do more. I
Hmm.
want to be a shaker and a mover in the big arena, but I'm not there. I'm not able to do that. So, but what I can do is what I can do every day.
Mm.
And so every day I wake up and I try to make this world a better place. And I'll just share with you one way. I mean, I know there's chaos and death, and even my age. When I meet a young person on the street, there's all these things that separate us.
Mhm.
And since I've been in Seattle, there's a phrase you have up here that people have been talking about called the Seattle freeze.
It has been mentioned on this show by multiple guests. It is a real thing. You are the
And
opposite of the Seattle freeze, just to call that out.
but let me say, back home we have a similar thing, but
Okay.
it's called giving you the cold shoulder.
Okay.
But it happens infrequently by other people. But here it's a just about every person has it. And so what I've done is I take my daily walks, and I walk several times a day. I've made it a point, and we even went down on 65th Street yesterday, I think it was, and I said, how am I going to make this world a better place? How am I going
Yeah.
to spread some good news and bring us together? How am I going to bring us together? That's
Mhm.
what I'm all
Yeah.
about. And this one world, one family, that's what we
Yeah.
are. And if everybody would just start there and then do something. And my something was this. I would say, and everybody here has earphones when they're walking down the street. So I had to break through that. And I would say, good afternoon. And several were on their earphones so much that they didn't hear me or see me. But I would say that 75% of the time, I got people to answer me that would not have answered me or wouldn't have even spoke before.
Right.
And so I said, man, this is great. I'm just going to see if I can't open Seattle up.
Love it.
You know, by being nice. And some people, when I said good morning to them or something, they would like, good morning, like,
Like,
oh my
what are you
God,
doing?
what am I going to do with this? What do you want? And so, you know, I just start there. And every single one of us can make the world a better place. And so I just say that's the way I do it. When we get into politics and people get heated, I try not to get heated because
it just
you
closes
know, like
everything
you said,
down, right? It's like a
it
clam.
closes.
It's like, no,
Yeah,
we're good. We're done.
yeah. And some folks, it's a lockbox. You can't go into it.
Right.
But you know, you can be kind to people.
That's right.
You know, and like you said, you can be compassionate to people. Sometimes showing empathy and compassion for one of the lockboxes will unlock them.
Yes, that is a hallelujah, right? That can be very strategic and impactful. Absolutely. Well, and you know, you brought up this point of, I don't know, I have this little saying, it's something that in my mind, it's sort of a mantra, be it in my career work, taking good care of clients that I'm so fortunate should they call on me, or my community give cause work, my board work, is how can I leave this position better than I found it? How can I leave this moment better than I found it? How can I leave this experience better than I found it? And for me, that's one of my sort of internal compasses to help me not get discouraged or give up or not get out of bed, quite frankly, some days with the current state of affairs. So I think that's kind of where you're going to. It's like, we may not be sitting in the White House, or we may not be, which you were, but we may not be the VP of a big company or insert whatever that is. My podcast isn't famous and global. I don't have 1 million followers on YouTube yet. I think after this episode, I will, Charles, with you and Raven at the helm. But where I'm going with that is I'm sort of being a little bit silly and trite, but is, if I have one person text me and say, you know what, I listened to that episode with Christy Zimmer, and wow, did that really light me up and help me find some confidence, which happened more than once from that episode, then you're right. I mean, that's the work. That is the work. Just how can we have our little particles impact things? Yeah.
Well, you were talking about, how it might wear you down or this, that, and the other. And I would say that, what I see in Kristine and your podcasting and what you're doing, I see your passion. And that's the thing that we all have to bring to the table. Like I said, I can walk down the street and say these things to people, but an introvert cannot. But that introvert has passions, and they have strengths, and they have gifts. And you lean into your strengths because your passion is something you can do all day long and never get tired. And so when you start feeling drained, it means you're leaning into things that aren't your passion. And so for me,
great clarification. That was excellent.
Yeah, if you find yourself in your job, your career, or whatever you're in, and all of a sudden, you find yourself drained, say you're doing a lot of numbers crunching and things like that, or you're doing some admin work in the back end of it, you want to be up front. And so leaning into the back end of your business drains you. So you have to get out of that and get back up front. Otherwise, you'll want to give up. You'll want to give away, and you'll say, I'm tired of this. No, you're not tired of it. You're just tired of doing the stuff that drains you.
Yes.
So when you start feeling drained, I tell myself this, because when I start feeling drained, for all of us out there on this podcast, when you start feeling drained in your day-to-day thing, you look in that mirror and say, what sets me on fire? What makes me tick? What makes me burn? Lean into that. Just start leaning back into your passion, because we can do all day long. What me and you're doing right now, we could do all day long and never get tired.
That's right. That's such a
So
good framing. It's not about, I didn't, even if you don't get enough sleep, like actual numbers on the
mhm,
clock, or
mhm,
maybe you didn't drink enough water or have the best meal. Like
mhm,
we know from a human standpoint, from a functioning, these little machines
mhm,
that can impact, but you couldn't have said it more beautifully and clear, Charles, is when you're doing
mhm,
what is your North Star, what lights you up, what makes your belly burn. We have all kinds of isms for it. You could just go, 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 right? Like a little
mhm.
bunny. Just keep
Absolutely.
on trucking.
Absolutely.
Oh, can't hear that
Absolutely.
enough. Well,
Mhm.
we are going to have you back because 45, 55 an hour is not enough. That's for sure. There are
Uh,
so many incredible gifts and wisdom seeking moments, Charles, that you have
mm,
already bestowed on us here and just
mm.
this episode 1. And I mean it. I'm going to have you back. But we do ask 2 questions to every guest as a bit of a start to wind down closure. And you've already sprinkled some of the answer on number 1, but I want to ask you direct. Given your background with where you grew up, and I know you come from a family of siblings, and just the highs and lows and the triumphs that you have worked through when you were a younger person. And again, we didn't get to a lot of that. But what would you tell your 20-year-old Charles if you could sit down today and talk to him? What would be, just echoing some of this wonderful Charles McKinney wisdom that you have shared with us, what would be something that you would remind him of or make sure he heard today? What would that be?
I think it would be to, I would say, even at 20 years old, I would say, find out what your passion is.
Mm,
Find out what your passion is and spend the rest of your life leaning into it.
okay, there you go.
That's what I'd
That
say.
that's
I,
that's as clear as day.
I don't know if the second question is going to answer. I did think about a couple of things to say at the close of this. And so,
Should I ask you?
yeah, go ahead.
If you had to choose one superpower, we've already heard about, I think, about 12, but I'm going to ask you to extrapolate one that you feel most connected to, the superpower you bring to your world every day, Charles. What would that be?
It'd be encouragement.
Mm,
Encouragement and empathy. All of these things I mentioned are, but I'll just stop with encouragement
mm,
or exhortation. That's one of my spiritual gifts is exhortation. And that's what I was going to say. It would be encouragement. And I was going to say this, and if this is a closing
sure.
time,
Yeah. Please
I would
share.
say this is what I tell that 20-year-old person, and I would tell everybody on the podcast today. The 2 most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you found out why.
Mm,
And when you find out why you're here, that's your passion.
mm,
And there's ways to do that. We won't discuss it here for the sake of time, but I like what I think it was John Wesley said. He said, set yourself on fire with your passion and people will come just to watch you burn.
mm.
So I would say to everyone, find out early what your passion is and burn.
Burn, baby, burn. That deserves a hallelujah and an amen. And I am going to church today because that put me on fire. Charles, you have been an absolute pleasure. Always a delight. Always good to see you. I know I get to see you again on Saturday. So I'm like
Yes.
winning the lottery this month with my Charles and McKinney family time. But thank you, honestly and
Thank you.
earnestly, for being here on Superpower today.
Well, thank you so much, Kristine. It's been an honor and pleasure to be here. And to all the folks that are going to listen to this, I hope they'll find something. And the more they find and learn from it, the greater your worth is to the world. And so just keep pouring into people. They need it. We need it. We all need it. I need you. You need me. We all need it.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode. If you enjoyed it, I hope you'll make it easy for others to enjoy it too. You can do that by subscribing, writing a review, and sharing episode links with others. Then you'll be my superhero.